Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name's Bob, I'll be your host. And today we had a really big event happen. Well, pretty big. There was an eclipse and it was talked about a lot in the news and stuff. Seemed like a pretty big deal. In the past, like many years in the past, people used to see events like this and they think it was some sign from the heavens, the end of the world, the apocalypse, that kind of thing. And you would think in this modern day and age, people would go, oh, it's just an eclipse. Happens all the time. But no, there are still some people that actually thought that this was a sign that the end of the world is here and that we're entering into the apocalypse. So, if you're watching this video, I would like to say congratulations, you survived the end of the world. So to celebrate, we're going to look at some games you can play in the end of the world. Post-apocalyptic games. So I got 8 different games for this list, but we're going to go ahead and start with some honorable mentions. And the first honorable mention we're going to look at is Dungeons and Dragons. And as you can see, my cat got a hold of my book and chewed it up, which I'm not happy about that, but most people would say this is a fantasy game, not a post-apocalypse game. But you could run Dungeons and Dragons as a post-apocalypse game. Your campaign could be set years after our world has collapsed. If you need more inspiration along those lines, you can look up the Thundarr the Barbarian cartoon from Hanna-Barbera. It did that kind of thing. Had a sword and sorcery thing going on in the post-apocalypse world. And that always seemed like it could be really fun for me. I've run a couple of games like that before, and they've worked out. The next thing we're going to look at as an honorable mention is a set of books called The End of the World. And my cat got a hold of the zombie one. She was very busy. But I got 3 out of the 4. And what these are is not so much post-apocalypse games as they are apocalypse games. You have End of the World Zombie Apocalypse, End of the World Wrath of the Gods, and End of the World Alien Invasion. And the 4th book was End of the World Rise of the Machines. And each one of them have a different type of apocalypse as it come upon the earth. And you make up a character of yourself, and you play through the apocalypse. And usually you play them as a one-shot, but you can go for a long-term campaign and play these games beyond the event, so they can easily become post-apocalypse games. But they're technically apocalypse games, so honorable mention. The last one, well, I got 2 more honorable mentions. We have Army of Darkness. Now, you may be asking yourself why I would include a role-playing game based off a movie that's not about the apocalypse in a post-apocalypse setting, that type deal. Well, this book has a couple of story ideas for you in here, campaigns set up for you. There's running through the movie, of course. There is another setting that takes place back when the Necronomicon was written, another setting that takes place during World War II, and a final setting for those of you that are really into the Evil Dead series and the Army of Darkness movie. You'll know there was an alternate ending where Ash oversleeps and wakes up in the future because he overslept 100 years. The world is over, the apocalypse has happened, and there's a story for that setting in here where the evil has taken over and you're fighting back. So that'll get an honorable mention. And finally, my last honorable mention is Mörk Borg. Mörk Borg is not an post-apocalypse game setting, but an apocalypse game setting. You're there's a rule in the game that's counting down as you play for the end of the world. And once that counter is sprung, the end of the world happens, everybody dies. But it is a very fun game building up to the apocalypse, and very much worth checking out. And now we're going to get into my list proper. There are 8 games I have for this list, and they're all post-apocalypse settings to one degree or another. The first is All Flesh Must Be Eaten. This is a zombie game. Now, I could go all day with different zombie games, and I have a list discussing different zombie games, but I've tried to limit my zombie games to a few. So we'll have All Flesh Must Be Eaten here represent the bulk of them. Now, this game will take you through the apocalypse event of the zombies attacking and everything, but it's also got stories in here for you to put settings together in the aftermath, the post-apocalypse of the zombie invasion. So this would be a very cool post-apocalypse game for you. The second one on the list is 2 books, actually, that I'm going to discuss, and it's kind of a cheat, but they're your generic style rules, GURPS, the D6 system, and so forth. And these give you the rules for the games and how to play, and you put your own stories and settings to them. So you could easily put together a post-apocalypse game using these rules. And that's pretty cool. The next one is one that's kind of famous. It's Rifts. And basically, if you want a post-apocalypse game that has anything and everything in it, this is the game you want to go with. You want mecha in your post-apocalypse world? This has got mecha. You want robots? It's got robots. Mutants, superheroes, werewolves, aliens, demons, you name it, it's in here. And Rifts is your grab bag of post-apocalypse stuff. Next one is another game put out by Palladium for your post-apocalypse setting, and it's After the Bomb. And After the Bomb uses the whole mutant animal aspect, living through the apocalypse and beyond. It's pretty cool. If you like Mutant Turtles, you can really get into this game. The next one is a fun one. Tank Girl. Tank Girl is definitely a post-apocalypse setting. It's based off the comic book in the movie, and it requires the master book to play. But it's a very cool game. I've run it once and had a lot of fun with that. My next post-apocalypse setting is Paranoia. This is the 5th edition of the game. There are newer editions out there. And this game takes place after what is known as the Big Oops. Basically, we nuked ourselves. Now everybody that survives is in a complex called the Alpha Complex, and it's ran by a computer that has gone sane over the centuries. And you're a clone troubleshooter, and anything and everything you can do is illegal and will get you killed. So you'll want to watch out for that. Very fun game. Not too serious. You can have a lot of fun with it. Next one we're going to talk about is the Mutiny Pop. This game is another post-apocalypse setting, and it's got your mutants and your robots and your cyborgs and your pure strand humans and everything else in it. And it's pretty cool. I have not got a chance to run it yet, and I really, really want to. But the only thing that, if you get this book and you go to read it and stuff, do bear in mind that the writing in this book is extremely small and may hurt your eyes. But it should be a pretty fun game. There's a lot of supplements for it. I can't wait to check it out. And the last book on my list is one I just got. I ordered this off of DriveThruRPG, but it's Gamma World 4th edition. And this is a really cool game. I've only ever played Gamma World once, many years ago in high school, and I've always wanted to play it again and run it. It's just a really cool game. Now, there are in total 7 editions of Gamma World, and depending on what you're looking for rules-wise, you'll want to pay attention to what you get. The first edition of Gamma World used its own rule setting, but it was close enough to be compatible with Dungeons & Dragons with a little bit of modification. The second edition of Gamma World used those same rules, slightly expanded and clarified. The third edition of Gamma World used the same rules that were used in TSR's Marvel Superheroes game, which used a bunch of charts and was really weird to play. I played it a couple of times. Kind of wish I had my books for it still, but those were lost years ago. The fourth edition, which is this edition, basically uses the rules for second edition Dungeons & Dragons, and it's pretty cool. It's my favorite version of it. The fifth edition of Gamma World uses the Alternity rules. And then you have the 6th edition, which was put out by White Wolf's Sword and Sorcery line, which was their version of Dungeons & Dragons. So it basically uses 3rd edition 3.5. And finally, 7th edition. 7th edition used 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons rules as a core and added in specialty dice beyond the normal dice you'd use for a role-playing game. And it added in specialty cards and made the game board and miniatures mandatory, and it's not a great game. But Gamma World is a classic as far as post-apocalypse games goes, and definitely worth checking out the earlier editions of that game. And that is my list of games that you can play in the End of the World. And the honorable mentions that talk about leading up to the End of the World. So, thank you for joining me. I look at these games, and hopefully you'll join me next time where we'll talk about something else. Bye.